AMC, the movie theater company.
There wasn't a whole lot of exposure to careers in consulting and stuff like that. So I think it's cool that you guys have this opportunity to kind of explore a career in this that is maybe a little less stereotypical of the business students. So that was what how I got introduced to it.
Yeah, and with me, I would say I'm kind of similar story is I didn't graduate from college saying, hey, let's go be a consultant. I don't even think I knew what consulting was in college, and still it can mean so many different things. So for me, I worked in the private industry for probably close to 8 years. During that time, got introduced to consultants that we worked with on a daily basis. Similar to Steve, hey, we implemented ServiceNow as part of what we did in a business. So hey, that brings about consultants that we interacted with. When I probably 5 years ago, we implemented a system called NetSuite to do our ERP and financials. And so that was really my first foray into working with consultants. From there on, I was our day-to-day really system administrator for NetSuite for this private company. So a year and a half ago, I said, hey, I want to do something different. I really like working with NetSuite, and I decided I wanted to continue working strictly with NetSuite. So that's when I joined the same team that helped us implement NetSuite 5.5 years ago for that company. Joined their implementation team as a senior associate to implement it for future companies. And so what I enjoy about that part is the variety that it brings. You're learning different businesses, what their day-to-days are. They're all doing different things, but they're using the same basic core system for an ERP.
Okay, so I'm going to start on this side this time. Could you tell us about your current consulting clientele, or maybe even a good consulting experience you've had that's memorable from the past?
Yeah, I mean, I like all of there's certainly clients I like better than others, that's for sure. I think what's memorable is how well they adapt to the system. Trying to teach some folks that are like similar ages as yourselves, NetSuite is pretty easy and fundamental, I would say. Trying to teach other generations NetSuite, and that's probably what I would say is the hardest piece, is really getting buy-in from our clients' own employees into the system. But that's also what I guess is the cool part about consulting is there's a thing called also change management as consultants as well. Like there's consultants that do everything. So I would say with that is what I enjoy the most is seeing the variety of the businesses that they do. Some are in telecom, some are in manufacturing, some are just a variety of services. And it's great to network with folks that are within there. So usually we're talking with their CFOs, their COOs, the key decision makers of how they want to structure their ERP system. So that's also one of the things that I really enjoy is working with those key decision makers.
I think there's probably going to be a lot of overlap in some of these answers, just because the way that what we all enjoy about consulting is the variety and stuff like that. For me, I'll kind of speak a little bit to consulting in Kansas City and how I've thought it's been an interesting, fun way to start my career, because we see a really wide variety of levels of maturity in the organizations we work with. My firm will have clients that have been established for 100 years and have been around for a long time, very, very mature, obviously. But then we could be working on a client the next week that either just started a couple of years ago and is still working on building out their internal audit department or their risk management model, stuff like that. So seeing the differing levels of maturity is kind of cool, because you can see how you can still bring value to an organization that's been around for years and years and years, or how you can still bring value to one that just started, and how that value differs is kind of interesting. And I think in Kansas City, there's a special concentration of a mixture of those clients. So that's something that I think is unique to the city that we live in.
Yeah, no, I definitely echo that sentiment with the variety as well too. I think off of some of the clients that I've worked with so far, it's been pretty interesting because I did not have, like I said, I went to school here for like audit for assurance. So I got a lot of the fundamentals. I remember taking like the cost accountings, the government accounting, like the intermediary accounting, like all the sort of things, you know, managerial and all that stuff. So I was very well prepared for going into audit and kind of having an idea of like what that was like. When I switched over to do consulting, especially in the niche area that I'm in of tech risk, it was like kind of jumping out of like the baby pool and jumping into like the Olympic pool, like head first. Like I had no idea a lot of what was going on. Like it was a lot of concepts, a lot of terms, a lot of terminology and methodology that was very brand new to me. I did have like a lot of, you know, soft skills from just being in public accounting that did help with the transition. But I think some of the clients that I have worked on, you know, I've had very good experiences with the team first and foremost, because the team, in my opinion, is like the most important part of, you know, working in consulting, is depending on like who you're working around, who you have to lean on, who you can rely on, and who can also help you out whenever you're struggling or going through something. So with a lot of the clients that I've worked on, like we deal with SOC reports, SOX reports, and then fake engagements as well too. And we're mainly looking at like the internal controls only. And so I've always seen it from a financial aspect. Now that I'm seeing it from like the IT aspect, I'm like, okay, what are we actually doing here? And so in the clients that I have worked on, it's been really nice to get that experience and that exposure firsthand from them of like, okay, this is how this goes. And this is like why we look at these things. And this is pretty much how it all comes together in the grand scheme of things. Like the reason that the business runs and the things that the business runs off of are done in these ways here, kind of like peeking back behind the curtain to take a look at things. And so usually with like those engagements that I've been on so far have been really beneficial and pretty impactful with like getting into the world of consulting and just seeing like, you know, kind of a niche side, but then also a glimpse into like the overall of what it is.
So give it a little different perspective. So I'm in charge of delivery, project delivery, program delivery for everything in the Midwest and west of the Mississippi for our business group. So I speak to a lot of different clients a lot of times, in some cases, not exactly the best of terms, because usually I'm at escalation points. That means something has happened that they need some help with. I think the best thing, thinking about it, I like to watch the growth, not only of my team and my guys that report up to me, but also the client as they grow along their journey with their IT journey, is how they're growing, how they're getting better, more efficient. They're reducing the amount of cost, which is very important to businesses nowadays. I find that very interesting. I find, I don't know that I have a favorite client. I have some, I think somebody said you have some that you really like and some that will remain nameless. But I mean, I've been fortunate. I think probably the best thing to do is that I've been fortunate to meet a lot of different people in a lot of different cultures, including I've done international projects where I've had to travel to Europe and one time to Saudi Arabia, which I'll never do again, another story. But the people aspect and watching them grow and learn and take what you tell them and put it into action and see it come to fruition is probably the best part of it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna echo that, Steve. From day one, the way I look at my role at any client is to put myself out of a job.
Yeah.
and it sounds a little morbid, but the idea is that if you do your job pretty effectively, you kind of make yourself obsolete because the clients take your recommendations, whatever you guide them through, they eventually inherit that, and then it becomes a part of their actual operation. So at that point, then I'm kind of free to evolve and go on to the next thing. So from a client standpoint, done international projects and also projects that are local. And the thing that I always realize is how much when you hear, hey, there's a project starting in Los Angeles Monday. And there's also this other project starting in Jackson, Tennessee. Anybody know where Jackson, Tennessee is? So if you ask the consultant that question, you say, well, where do you want to go? Who doesn't want to be in LA for a long-term project, for example? But I've always seen that it's not necessarily the location, it's also the type of work that you're going to do. And that I never stopped being amazed by the fact that a project on its surface is never really what it turns out to be. A lot of that's really due to the client. If you have a good relationship with them, you can be on a project where you're pretty much in a closet for a couple of weeks and then you only come out to
And I've been
eat.
on those projects where on Wall Street, they literally had us in a closet. I'm not kidding. So we looked over the river and the broom closet. That's how we did our work. So
So what happens in those projects, so I found just as rewarding, if not more so than the projects where you're going to a metropolitan area where you probably want to spend the weekend. So altogether, I think it really comes on balance. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Okay. So what would you all say is the biggest misconception about consulting that you like to dispel?
I have a response pre-COVID and
Yes.
post-COVID. So pre-COVID it was very much, you guys have probably seen the show House of Lies. A lot of that stuff, yeah, there's some myth to it, but get on a plane early on a Monday and come back on a Thursday and having really your project team be your extended kin of some sort. There's a lot of truth to that. But I would say that most of consulting is not really about that. It's kind of like we get a lot of people from different backgrounds, and one of our consultants was actually in a prior career a hostage negotiator. And you think, your mind automatically goes to, 10 situations where you're trying to get somebody out of a situation that can harm their life. Well, he says a lot of that's not really, 90% of what I do is not talking to someone who's got their hand on the bomb or about to execute a family or anything like that. They say it's a lot of prep work, it's a lot of office work, it's a lot of avoiding that situation to begin with. And a lot of the stuff that we do as consultants, from my standpoint, is a lot of getting ready so that those conversations that may get up to Steve doesn't happen in the first place. So that you can actually take care of what the client is having you there to do. And so really managing the team, managing the work, and really can't understate it enough. Morale is very important for a project team because your people or your resources, those are your big assets. If they don't click, you're probably not going to go as far as you'd like to.
yeah, I think my answer would be the same. Pre-COVID, I was kind of sitting here being jealous that somebody said they do work here in Kansas City. People ask me all the time, do you know so much and such in the Kansas City office? No, but I can tell you people in New York and in Houston, because that's where I usually was at. So as glamorous as travel can be, there's a couple of points here. Do it while you're young and you don't have a family and that kind of thing. I do think that part of it is interesting, although now that we're in the post-COVID era, I don't know that travel is going to be as extensive as what it was, but it does give you a chance to kind of see the world. But travel week on week, out every Monday, 6 a.m. flight, back every Thursday evening or Friday morning, depending on what happened with the flight. Week after week does wear on you. So if you're a homebody, it's probably not the right career for you. People think it's oh, you got such a cushy job. They don't see the 14-hour days or the, oh my God, I got to get this deck put together for this client meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., that type of thing. So those are probably some of the biggest misconceptions, I think, consulting.
Yeah, I think these guys pretty much hit the nail on the head, especially from their breadth of experience. I guess like from a more niche standpoint for me, one thing that I kind of thought was like consulting was just business, and that was it. Like I didn't know that there were a lot of other arenas in consulting because I didn't really learn that while I was here, and I didn't really look into it either. So getting into it in like the real world aspect kind of opened my eyes to like, even at EY, we have like business consulting and then tech risk consulting that we'll do. And just to kind of see how the different teams interact, see the, variety of options, both within public accounting and then within private industry. There's really not anything you can pigeonhole yourself with unless you really like what you're doing. So I would say just definitely ask questions, try and get exposure on a lot of different things that you're interested in. Definitely reach out to people who have done it before or who are currently doing it now to try and understand a little bit more of like what that entails, what that looks like, maybe what you could start doing now if you wanted to gear yourself for that position. But yeah, just don't limit yourself because there's definitely a lot out there that you could get into.
Yeah, in terms of not limiting yourself too, I would just say, even if you prefer to stay local or you have things that are keeping you close to home, don't just dismiss that a career in consulting couldn't be for you, because there's so many firms these days. There's so many niche markets and industries and stuff like that like, for instance, I've been with my firm for just over 2 years now, and I've traveled once for a client, and I kind of prefer that because I mean, my family's here, like, so, and the people are very, I think Steve kind of spoke to this, but post-COVID and in the new like working world that we have, people are more willing to be flexible in terms of like, hey, like, I don't think I can make it out there this week. Can I do it remote? Like, yeah, like it can be done. So I would say don't entirely avoid a career in consulting if you think, oh no, I don't want to travel, so can't do it. That's not the case. Like you can still have a consulting career and stay in one place your whole life.
Yeah, and I guess mine echoes really what everybody said so far is, don't think that it can silo you or any of those things. When I first started in consulting, I think one of my wife or family had said, great, so you're gonna work like 4 hours a day and you can do 5 projects for the other 4 hours. No. And it goes back to the variety. You may work on 3 or 4 clients on a daily basis. You may work on more than that. You may work on one entirely. When I first got into consulting a year and a half ago, I worked on the same client for my first year. The same one every day, almost 100%. A lot of what I do now is more supporting of various clients, not a direct implementation. So now I touch 5 or 6 clients on a daily basis, and it may be 10 clients on a weekly basis kind of combined. So it's that, yeah, is really it. I think the other side is that for me was a big change was filling out a time card. So it's great to just, when you're working in a private company, you just show up to work at whenever is expected. Some clients have different expectations, but trying to bill your time in 15-minute increments or 6-minute increments or whatever the policy may be is certainly something that I had to adjust to.
Yeah. Thank you guys for that. So I wanted to ask you guys some questions relevant to students here. So why do you think students should consider a career in consulting in Kansas City? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I go back to the variety it gives. And just because you're trying, if you say, hey, I'm interested in a career in consulting, it can mean a million different things. You've heard risk, you've heard audit, tax. I do business applications, which for us at RSM is probably 20 different business applications that we support. So I was at a client and he said, so he's like, how do you learn NetSuite on top of everything else you're expected to do? And I was like, well, the only expectation they have of me is that I am a NetSuite senior associate. So like, I don't do risk consulting and provide any of those services. We have other team members that provide those services. So I would say as far as like why get into consulting, I think it's based upon your personality. Maybe you're an outgoing person, you like interacting with new clients, new customers. It may be the fact that you like trying to come up with solutions. I mean, that's what we do within our NetSuite practice is come up with a solution of their ERP system to meet their business requirements, and their business requirements may change over the years, and they're going to need adjustments to their ERP system. So if you enjoy somebody that does that type of kind of thinking, it can fit a variety of personalities, from coding to anything else. So it has a wide variety of fit, depending upon the individuals.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you guys have heard me talk about why I think Kansas City is a good place to start your career and especially in consulting. But something that I would say is, and Steve might disagree with this when we get down to him, but I feel like it's easier to start your career in consulting than it is to like break into it later in your career. I've talked to a variety of people in our office here in Kansas City that have transitioned from industry to consulting, and first and foremost, most of them wish they would have done it sooner. And second, I think that it's easier to go from consulting and then jump into industry if you find out consulting is maybe not for you. So I just think it's a good like starting point that it can really open up a lot of doors for you, even if even if your current firm, you don't enjoy really, or something like that. I think it's easier to jump into industry after working consulting than vice versa. So I would honestly probably recommend starting with consulting. We'll see if Steve.
And I think the part of,
I say you because you started, you started
Well, I mean,
like
I'll go
later
ahead
in
and
your
I would
career.
agree. I'm actually gonna agree with you.
You're gonna agree? All right.
I think it is because the biggest problem folks that come from industry into consulting have is the pace. Everything moves at such a quick pace.
Yeah.
I think you said you work on multiple clients some days, right?
Yeah.
And so you gotta quickly switch hats.
Yeah.
And
keep track of those hours.
keep track of the hours, because that's the other thing, is because the only product we produce as a consultant is our time. So it's not like we're producing widgets, so that time is very important. And people just, I work with project and program managers, and a project or program manager in a corporate environment projects have a tendency to kind of meander from year to year. Budgets are kind of winked at, But here you're delivering work for a client that you've got contractual obligations for. You've got to have it done by a certain date. And, you've got people breathing down your neck, and people that come out of industry aren't used to that. You may have to go talk to your VP once or twice a year about why your project's not going to deliver, but it's not as important as, what you're doing for a client. The stakes are a lot higher.
And I would just add to that is part of what I enjoy too is like learning a lot of different industries. You get to learn about telecommunications and what people that install fiber in the ground do. You get to learn about folks that sell services, companies that exist because of manufacturing. So you get to kind of learn a lot about different industries being in consulting. And from there, you develop a lot of relationships. So if down the road, if you've done a great job for them and maybe they have a job opening and they reach out and say, hey, would you be interested in this? It gives you a lot of great exposure at the same time as you're giving yourself skills.
Yeah. I mean, these guys, they kind of tag team it over here, man. These guys are like the all-stars of consulting talk right now. But yeah, I mean, like they're 100% accurate with it, man. I wish I would have got a little bit more of an earlier start with the consulting work that I'm doing now. It does help that I didn't take too long to kind of get into it. And I will say, like, the assurance and audit experience that I did have before, working on different clients, having to keep track of time, working in team spaces, and just all the other like things that you have to adjust from if you are coming from industry to consulting were built up in me already. So it was a bit easier for me to adapt to that. But I think these guys are definitely dead on with, like, if you don't have any exposure and experience to that, it can be a shock to your system, on top of like also trying to learn the client, learn like what your in and outs are going to be, what your deliverables are, like all sorts of things like that. And I speak a little bit more from like a niche, tech risk side of things, but yeah, I mean, Kansas City is also not a terrible place to work at, man. We work with a lot of different people from the, in Kansas City, outside Kansas City. And I think with consulting, like it's been said here before, the networking is really one of the biggest benefits of it, because you don't stay in one industry, you don't stay with one client, you don't stay dealing with one person or one team. You really do get to work, whether it be with different companies, whether it be with different people within your own company, whether it be from people from the company like in a St. Louis office or Chicago office or in LA, New York, whatever. You do have like a lot more access to different people that you probably wouldn't have in a lot of other, industries. Like, I hope nobody here's looking at tax, but I'm gonna talk a little bit bad about tax right now, so I apologize. I'm friends with some tax people. My girlfriend's a tax person, so I think I have the right to say this, but they can be a little bit more closed off. It's very much like, talk about being a homebody and not really wanting to do things. That right there, tax for you is the way to go, because man, oh man, they do not go anywhere, and they stay very much focused. It's a little box they just sit in every day. I don't know how they do it, but aside from that, like you can have a little bit of that with the consulting, and I know like I get that with what I do, but there is also that exposure to the different people, the different environments, and just the freedom to kind of move around. And if you do want to get into something else somewhere else, or you're interested in a different field, you kind of have something to go off of there, where you're not just completely coming into it blind, or like wishing on a star that something just pans out one day. So it's kind of all I gotta add there.
Really not a whole lot, so I'll just be quick from my perspective. The Kansas City market, one that I really didn't see when I started my career because I was kind of out everywhere else but Kansas City. But there's a lot of opportunity here to the question as far as why Kansas City is right for consulting. I got a colleague over at one of the local, it's local now, but Solid Consulting, they're looking to open up an office with over 300 consultants, in a 5-year plan. So it's like, they're not doing that because they're like the Chiefs or whatever. They have exact actual business case for consulting to be in Kansas City. And I think that's something that I'm understanding and appreciating a lot more. Also, the other thing is that virtualization, a lot of consulting, you guys work in Kansas City and you don't have to go on a plane. So there's a lot of work that's being done in very specific locations, but that can affect wide arrays of clients in different locations. So whether you're in Kansas City, Omaha, Nebraska, Austin, Texas, the work is still going to be there. So consulting in Kansas City, I don't see why it would be any different than anywhere else.
Here's a hot take. So a positive out of COVID is the fact that most of us in our industry, because we're virtual now, we're more productive than we were pre-COVID because you're not sitting in an airport or sitting on a plane for 2 days out of the week.
Yeah.
So.
And I would say to piggyback on that is COVID was awful, but it also brought about a lot of business changes. A lot of companies were then looking to say, hey, how do we put this process in the cloud? How do we allow our employees to get their work done from home or work remote or whatever it be? Which a lot of that work gets done by consultants.
Yep.
One of them that we did, an example from being on the private side, was we implemented a automated accounts payable process using a third party, which involved consultants and everything. So a lot of the projects that get brought on or started also started because of COVID, forcing businesses to adapt.
Brought up a lot of new business opportunities.
Killed some.
Our company is 750,000 employees globally. And we turned on a dime. We went from people all over the world to virtual within a day. And our clients didn't miss a step.
Good.
So
That's incredible. Okay. So for the students here who are maybe on the fence about consulting, or maybe they want to go into consulting, what advice would you give them? And then on top of that, what's the best piece of advice you got in your personal life or in your career?
If you're on the fence, me having all the way been sold on consulting, I would say that right now is a good time to get in because the industry continues to be redefined. We were just talking about how things are changing with the models and things being a lot more virtual now, but your individualism, however you see yourself as a professional, as a person, probably hasn't been as encouraged as much as it is now because there's a lot of different teachings and different findings that are being pulled from other industries and being brought into consulting. So I would say there's no one method to be a consultant. There's no one profile that reads this person's a consultant unless you maybe see their resume. So definitely don't assume that all of the things that even we're saying up here is the only way that your career could pan out. There could be a lot of different avenues and you have a lot of different perspective that you can bring into consulting industries. We have clients that we've worked in Silicon Valley where if you show up even the way that I'm showing up, I'm overdressed. I might step into an area like, oh, who is this guy? I automatically stand out. So it's not about what you got on. It's not about necessarily what you even studied. Some of our best consultants don't have a business or finance background, or even a technology background. They just understand, they have a liberal arts background, for example. So there's a lot of different things you can bring to the industry. Try it out. And you'll see that it'll probably surprise you along the journey.
probably the number one thing is be flexible. Just, go with the flow, and trust yourself. You're stronger than you realize. You're developing what I like to call the imaginary tool belt right now. You don't know it, but you will. And everything you do, you'll add to that tool belt, and you'll come across a situation where you'll be like, oh, I've got the right tool right here. Okay. The other thing I found, and probably the best thing, there's two more points on consulting. One, they don't pay consultants to sit on the phone and listen to meetings. They pay for our point of view. We see, we see the industries, right? So they want to know what is it that you have seen, what other people do. Have courage to tell them, all right? And the other thing is, I've learned, and this is gonna sound bad, but If you say something with enough confidence and conviction, you're probably gonna be okay. So
Yeah.
when in doubt, again, trust yourself, be confident, you'll be fine.
Yeah, that is a big one right there. I'll tell you what, I never experienced that more than when I worked in radio, but definitely in consulting as well too. Like I don't know. I think growing up, I always thought like the adults always had it figured out, and like the grown-ups and the people that were like super professionals were like, oh man, they're on it. They just like stay up at night reading the encyclopedias and like they just start the day off like with 100 push-ups and they're good to go, man. Man, if I could tell you how many people I've come across that I'm just like, how did you actually get here? And realize I'm like, oh, you're just like real good at talk. Like, you know how to like schmooze and move. Like you guys are, it's crazy. Confidence is key in so many areas. Like that's no substitute for actual knowledge and experience. Don't get me wrong. You do need to know what you're doing to an extent. But, you know, if you have some of that, the confidence can take you just that much farther. So to kind of piggyback off of that, and I'd say, you know, definitely for my advice would just be, you know, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't feel like you're you know, imposing or intruding in someone's space. Like if you are interested, if there's something that you want to do, if there's anything, like you're paying to be here, you know, you're getting a degree, you're trying to figure out what am I going to do to set me up for success in life, you know, and school is going to be a great resource, but another great resource on top of that is just networking, getting to know people, even if it's just a short phone call, an email, you know, seeing if you can grab a coffee with somebody, anything like that, man, it'll set you up and it'll help you out, because even if they're not the one to get you to where you want to get to, they may remember you, or they may know somebody who's looking for somebody like you and be able to refer you or get back out to you. So I'd say that's kind of my biggest piece here. I mean, school is partly for the education, but I think another big part of it, because I mean, it speaks to where I'm at now. I wouldn't be in this position that I'm in had it not been like from a referral from a friend who I went to school with. And, you know, it's been one of the greatest decisions that I made and one of the best things that I've been able to take away from my whole experience. So definitely get out there. Don't be afraid to interact, network here, but also see people like us, see people not like us that are doing other things like within consulting that you may be interested in. Hit them up on LinkedIn, reach out to them, go to these sort of things, and just continue to broaden your, you know, your scope, broaden your network, because, you know, the wider net that you cast, the more of a chance you have to like actually pull something in and get something that you're looking for. So that's kind of my spiel.
Yeah, I mean, my advice for somebody who is interested in a career in consulting completely just echoes all that. Is just be your own advocate. Really, if you're interested in it, I feel like it seems to be with panels like this and stuff like that, that the tide's kind of changing and people are kind of realizing what kind of careers are out there as far as consulting goes. But even 2-3 years ago when I was in school and I was looking for what I was going to do once I graduated, it just wasn't very prevalent. There wasn't a lot of recruiters like at the business school all the time and stuff like that. So if you're interested in consulting, like Nate said, just seek it out. Seek out connections and connect with people who are in the career, see what they like about it, what they don't like about it, all kinds of stuff like that. And then I think a piece of advice that I got early on that I still think of every time I start a new project or start on a new client or something is just to be patient with yourself. I think that's something with consulting is there's sometimes steep learning curves because you got to pick up either a new software right away or you got to learn like a new audit tool or something like that you haven't ever worked in before, and you have a 6-week project. So the first week can't be all just learning it. So you got to learn in a couple of days. So it can be intimidating, but just be patient with yourself. Know that it'll come. You'll absorb the information in a time that you're supposed to, and just give yourself the leeway to kind of get acclimated on clients and projects and stuff like that, because that'll lead to a better experience down the line.
I think for me, it goes back to look at yourself, kind of what they have all said so far, but look at yourself as a brand. The clients that you interact with on a daily basis, a weekly, whoever they are, you're really an extension of them. So as people kind of view you, they're also viewing the clients you work with. It goes back to also then with your brand is like your social media, your everything about it is all putting together your brand. So just be cognizant of what you're putting out there as being available and everything. I would also say is like best piece of advice I would recommend. I kind of view things as far as like it's not always about the ladder you're on, but the lattice you're leaving. So the impact your decisions have on people, that have on companies, that have on yourself. Just always, I would say, kind of keep that in mind as well, as it's not always about the ladder, it's about your lattice.
So I'm pretty sure we can all speak to this extensively, but making mistakes is probably going to be we can rid up some of the best learning experiences that we can possibly have from making mistakes. So can you guys tell me about a time in your career where you made a mistake, what you learned from it, and how you overcame it? Sorry, dude.
I make mistakes every day. Some are smaller than others, some are bigger than others. Whether it's in an email, whether it's in your work, whatever it be. I mean, we all make mistakes all the time. Nobody's perfect. I would just say the biggest piece of that is just own it. So if it's I'm going to say a fire or a catastrophe, then be willing to pitch in to fix it. Also, you have teammates for a reason. They're there to help you as well. So I think my biggest piece there is just own your mistake. Don't try to hide behind it. Don't try to bury it, that type of thing. Own it.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the work that I do is I'm in our internal audit practice. So we work with clients and we're either extensions of their internal audit department or stuff like that. So we're doing a lot of control testing and filling out lead sheets and stuff. And I mean, kind of like Marcus said, like I make mistakes on those all the time. But the thing is there's multiple people. There's people that review your work papers and then they provide coaching notes and stuff like that on either corrections that need to be made or just things to look out for next time. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities for growth and feedback in a career in consulting. And so just being willing to take that as constructive criticism and stuff is really important. Because I mean, at the end of the day, everyone just wants you to succeed and wants you to learn and stuff like that. There's better and worse ways to deliver that, of course, but I think just being open to that feedback is the most important part.
Yeah. I think these guys are 100% right. Like owning it is one of those big things that I stick to. Man, I've got like a resume list of mistakes that I made at this point between many different things that I've done and been able to do. But owning it has always been one of those things that's allowed me to actually grow from it and kind of capitalize off of it in a way to be like, okay, I don't know this to the extent that I should know this, or like, you know, I'm not getting it the way that I need to get it. So like, obviously I need some help, and this can kind of be a flag or signpost like, oh yeah, this is what we need to focus on for you. But like on top of that, the road to success, like mistakes and failures is kind of the building blocks of it. Like you're only going to be able to grow off of the things that you don't know. And like a lot of times that means just taking a shot at it, getting it wrong, figuring out where you went wrong, and then learning why it was wrong, where it went wrong, what you did wrong, what your thought process was that was wrong with it, and then correcting that for the next time. And I mean, it's going to be like a cycle of it. It's not just like you make a couple mistakes and all of a sudden you're a genius or you're a rock star. Like it's always happening. Like I'm sure these guys have still made mistakes and make mistakes, not like super huge ones, but it happens. We're human, J. Cole said nobody's perfect. And I'm pretty sure Miley Cyrus said it's a climb. So if nothing else, if you're not going to listen to us, at least listen to some of them because they got some sort of experience there. But yeah, I mean, mistakes are part of the game. It's just part of the business, and it's part of it.
What are you talking about?
I know. Yeah, it comes out every once in a while. But yeah.
I can't really add much more than what they say, own up to it. And I have found that if you've got bad news that you have to give, it's better to go ahead and get it out of the way than to sit and stew on it.
Yep.
Or to sit and hold it back. Just take your medicine and go on.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm gonna
Yeah.
do.
Mistakes in the circle of life in consulting. I mean, a lot of things that keep us employed because clients have made mistakes. So a lot of ways can't think that it can't happen to you.
Yeah.
Some mistakes are bigger than others. I mean, I've had, gaffes, replying all, for example.
Yeah.
Something that was
All done.
intended for one or two people. And get it out quick. I can relate to that. I think I had an instance where I underbilled our services by 12,000 once, and I was the one who caught it. So I immediately went up and luckily by then you kind of build up a bit of goodwill to be able to get absolved from your mistakes. So it's always good to have a little bit of currency in the bank to account for that.
I always remember too, the reason we're consultants and we're brought in anyway. I always tell my guys, they don't tell you, you know, they don't say, hey, things are going great, you got some extra cash, let's call it Accenture. No, things are probably, they've made some mistakes or they've had some problems. They need some help, right? So it's just inherent in what we do. Everybody's making mistakes. We're trying to make it better. So.
Kenny Rogers, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Is that, you know that one?
I'm the radio man.
Okay, all right, there we go. I was gonna try and get Steve on one of these.
I think, I mean, it goes back to mistakes and everything, but a lot of times the projects that we're on have started with a budget. And a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of the time, but there's no worse conversation to complete a budget and tell a client, hey, by the way, we actually were 25% over budget. So sorry, you're gonna have to also stomach this. Those aren't fun conversations to have, but if you know that the work you're doing has been more in-depth than what was estimated up front, then have those conversations early. And be upfront about it versus getting to the end of a project and say, hey, we're 25% over budget. So
Write these
it
two
goes back
words
to-
down, change order. That helps you in that situation. You'll say that 1,000 times in your career. This is gonna be a change order.
Gonna need a statement of work for that.
That's the second thing, statement of work. So if you haven't taken business law, I'd suggest you do, because you're gonna read a ton of SOWs in your career, so.
That's some phenomenal advice. Thank you, guys. So I want to get into you guys' operations now. So what does your day-to-day work life look like, and how do you achieve a work-life balance?
Again, pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think for me, one of the mistakes I did was I didn't really have an appreciation for work-life balance. I kind of just threw myself into whatever I was doing. And the reminder is, if you don't know how to manage your time, someone will manage it for you. It won't be to your best interest. So for me, I've never been in a situation where I said, man, I got an extra 2 hours. I wish I could have did more work. That doesn't really happen. So the work's gonna be there. Yes, you got deadlines, you've got things you got to be accountable for, but you have to really manage yourself. Because if you're not at your best, you can't expect your team to be, you can't expect your work to be.
Yeah, days start fairly early. If you've got East Coast clients or whatnot, you're here in the Midwest, you're probably on the phone starting at 7 in the morning. And if you're supporting out West, well, you're probably on the phone until 7 at night. Typically you start out, at least I can't speak for these guys, but you start out with what you think your day is going to be, what your meetings are going to be, that type of thing.
Cross
And
it all
then
off.
you have to adjust as you go,
And then
because things will come up, especially if you have people that report to you, because your number one job as a lead or a manager is to be there for your peeps. So you got to be there to handle whatever comes that way. The one thing I tell everybody, and I tell new folks that join, is you've got to hold your boundaries. The firm will take what you give it. And so, if you love working till midnight every night, well, the firm's going to keep doing that until you have to be the one to set that boundary. And also, periodically invest back in yourself. So that means training or maybe join some professional organizations. I would highly recommend all of you look at PMI when you get out of here, particularly if you have an interest in project management, become a project management professional. That's really where you'll start to really elevate your career. But to do that, you're going to have to kind of separate day-to-day job versus I got to invest in myself.
I think the two words that I can say off of what these guys have said so far, time management. That's, the biggest thing there. It's going to make or break you. Because you can start your day, like for me, I try and start my day around like 8, 9, but like there's, between meetings, having to deal with like conflicts that may rise up. We also work heavily with a third-party firm out of India that we can outsource some of our work to. And so they operate on a, reverse schedule than we do. So when we're starting our day, they're wrapping it up and vice versa. So you also have to be able to be up early for, those 6, 7 a.m. meeting calls, because, you don't want to make them have to stay up an extra 2, 3 hours just to talk to you about stuff, especially if it's things that are going to help out with moving the project along or, something that's big that needs to be addressed. So yeah, I would say, for my day-to-day experience, most times I try and, look at what the calendar has, see what meetings I have scheduled, try and make sure that I block off time like in between those, for the work-life balance portion, definitely to like eat. Definitely try and eat, it's gonna get away from you, especially around lunchtime. That's the big one you want to try and hit and not miss on, because man, the rest of your day is gonna be tough if you don't get that lunch in. And then also just to take some breaks, every once in a while, a good 15-minute break will help go a long way. Break up the mundaneness, like give your brain some sort of, clarity for a minute before you dive back into what you got going on. But yeah, it's really, your day can start off one way of how you think it's going to go, but then by noon, it's a whole nother day than you were expecting, and things you thought you were going to be able to do today, you got to hold off until tomorrow. And it's really about prioritizing, time management, and pretty much just the combo of those two, and making sure you don't overwork yourself, because like these guys said, there's always going to be work, and no one's ever going to get mad at you above for like putting in more work, because it's like, oh, thank you for basically working for free. Yeah, so we'll expect that next week for you. We'll just make sure the budget reflects that. So yeah, just respect for yourself, respect for your work, and respect for your time. Probably the biggest things there.
Yeah, I mean, I really not much to add, so I'll be quick too. But just what Steve said, really, hit home is establish your boundaries and stick to them. I think another good thing that's come out of the pandemic and everything is that people got a glimpse into like their coworkers' personal lives a little bit more. They got to see,
Clean that up.
they got to see their rooms, their home offices, stuff like that. They got to see their kids in the background or their pets or stuff like that. And I think that was good because it kind of humanized everybody, and everyone was like, okay, we all like, yes, we're all here to do a job, and we have deadlines to meet and tasks to complete, but we're also all just people too, and we have our lives outside of work. And just I think a lot of people have taken that and been more understanding and flexible and stuff like that. So I think that if you're establishing those boundaries, and if you're clear with like what's important to you, what your priorities are, like if you're like, hey, like I'll be on a little earlier in the morning, but that's because I have to leave a little earlier in the afternoon because I want to pick up my kid from school or something like that. Like I think people are more willing to accept that in today's day and age than maybe even 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say set boundaries a fifth time, but that is, I think the key is a matter of if you want to be somebody that works 12 hours a day, great, work 12 hours a day and you can define what your schedule is. If you have to go pick up your kid from daycare like I do every day at 5, then it's not a matter of like a question like, oh shoot, this call can run long, that type of thing. Define what your boundaries are and then hold yourselves accountable to them. I would also say I think it's been said, but take time for yourself, whether it's vacations, plan them out. Don't just be like, oh, I'm too busy, I can't take a vacation. If you define and you set that, yes, you want to set aside the time to take a vacation, the project will be there. There's other people that can pick it up, whatever it be. So I set boundaries, take care of yourself or put yourself first. Those are the couple. As far as work-life balance as well, as I would say, keep in mind what you want in a company. Different companies offer different pieces, whether you think family is important, whether you think travel, whatever it be. Keep that in mind when you're trying to find the best fit for yourself. I was fortunate enough that my wife and I had a baby back in February and I was gone from work for 7 weeks. Some companies, 12 weeks, whatever is a priority for you as far as life, it's going to be there.
Amazes me that they're letting, my first child was born, I got 3 days off.
Yeah. I think we just changed ours to be 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that mine is a good thing.
Right.
And so the last question for me before I open up to the audience here, I want to ask, what do you hope to see from future consultants going forward? Start with.
You would say it again?
So what do you hope to see from future consultants in the industry?
I think just the willingness to jump in. It's hard to come out of school and say, hey, I know NetSuite to a T. I can do this project or that type of thing. So there's the only really true way to gain experience in a lot of these areas is having an internship or a co-op or work experience that cover these pieces of a consulting. So I would just say the willingness to help participate, get involved, and learn it.
Yeah. I would say something it's been cool for me and at our firm. We have a fairly small office here in Kansas City. It's about 40 people, and nationwide where we have thousands of consultants, but our Kansas City market's fairly small still. So we all get to kind of show our own personalities when we're working and stuff like that. And so I would just say bring your whole self to like your work and stuff like that, and search for a company and find a company that makes you feel like you can be yourself at work, makes you feel like being yourself brings value to the team that you're on and stuff like that. And just don't be afraid to kind of try out different things and see what works and what doesn't, where you feel at home, where you don't. Because I've been lucky to find a place where I feel that I can be myself at work, and that I actually bring value to my work by being myself and bringing different perspectives. And we all have different backgrounds and experiences. So don't shy away from that. Really infuse your work with those experiences, because it'll bring a lot of value.
Yeah. What was the core question again? I was about to go off on something, but I was like, I'm about to lose where we're going.
So what is something you'd like to see from future
From
consultants?
future consultants, that's
Yes.
right. Okay. Yeah, definitely what these guys have said, because they were about to have me going on something whole, like on top of that. But yeah, staying hungry, staying humble, bringing your best self to your work, figuring out the right culture, the environment that you're going to fit in the best with, the people who you're going to vibe the best with. You know, you're going to spend a majority of your time working with these people. And that was something that was told to me when I was looking for jobs. It's like, you know, more than you spend with like your significant other, than you spend with your family, you're going to spend it with these people, unless you're working from home, and then you kind of get to mix it up a little bit. But odds are you still have to interact with these people, and they're going to be very important to your career and your success. So finding people who you feel like are going to really be there to support you, that you feel like you can connect to, super important. So keeping that mindset, keeping the mindset of like, you know, you're not going to know it all, but still be confident in the fact that you don't know, and be confident in the work that you can do and the things that you can produce and the questions that you can raise. Confidence is key with that. Yeah, and just bringing a good attitude. You know, nobody likes anyone that's going to be a Debbie Downer, or someone that they feel you say the wrong thing to, or you accidentally, if you feel like you may be giving them too much, they're just going to blow up, or, you know, throw it back on you in some way. So just try and remain like, you know, level-headed, even Steven, just a, you know, calm demeanor, calm personality, but just, you know, friendly and gentle for the most part. I mean, like really just treat yourself how you, or treat other people the way you want to be treated. The golden rule definitely applies. And there was something else that I was going to throw on there, but I think that's enough for you guys. So we'll leave it there. I've got a lot of thoughts about this.
I'd say I want to see him embrace technology. You know, I'm sitting here thinking back to when I was at school here. I was just having this thought. We were using dual floppy disks back then. Okay. And if you had to have something printed out, you had to send it to the print center and walk down the hill to go see, only find that your program didn't work and it didn't pull up what you were wanting it to pull up. When I think about where that has come from when I was sitting in your chair to where we are today, and then I think about the things that, you know, I would be really excited 20 years from now with the things like the metaverse and the VR capabilities and the things that, you know, we haven't even thought of today that you're going to get introduced to. I mean, we didn't have phones back then that we carry around with us. So I would say, you know, be hungry to learn and embrace the technology that's coming at you.
That is exactly what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
No, that's perfect, because I don't have a whole lot to add to it. The only thing is that if that doesn't make sense, there are practices that are essentially collapsing the walls where technology is no longer its own division or its own practice.
Correct.
It's within the practice. Whether you do oil and gas, insurance, healthcare, finance, the technology is in there. And all of them have very similar traits. A lot of the stuff that you guys are reading about now, whether it be AI, blockchain, you know, anything in the digital space, robotic process automation, all those things have an application across all industries. So embrace that technology and make sure that you have at least a point of view on how you can apply it to whatever you're working on.
I just realized that if you're not sure what a dual floppy disk is, come see me after class.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it.
Google it, yeah.
All right, so I'm now gonna open up the forum to audience questions. So if anyone has anything they want to ask, go ahead and raise your hands.
Hi, I'm Sonia. I'm a finance graduate. A lot of times I have seen like people having majors in finance and switching into consulting. And I have seen people nailing it too. But I'm like quite enthusiastic to learn like how my finance degree like helped me when I switch to consulting, and will it be like very hard to get into?
Well, who was it that was talking about billing or something?
About what?
You talking, one of you were talking about billing or invoicing or.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, so. yeah.
Budgeting, that was it.
Yeah. We do, I mean, I was a accounting and supply chain major at Iowa State. Certainly there is no major that says consulting. So it'd be great if there was, but I don't even know if you could cover all the topics in 4 years to get through. No.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest translation that I see from majors versus what we do in consulting is just the willingness to learn. The ability to really analyze a situation and try to come out with an outcome. I've worked on projects that lasted 3 months. I've worked on other projects that lasted a year. There's projects that we have ongoing that'll be 2 or 3 or 4 year projects, where you just have to, you can't look at it in terms like, how do I need to solve for this problem right in front of me? How does this affect the bigger business process? So with finance, I think a lot of that is a matter of like how you communicate, just communication skills. A lot of that, I can't even count that. If I had $1 for every Zoom meeting we've probably all had, we'd have a lot of dollars. So just the communication skills, like they said, embracing change. Some of those things I think are really relatable from any major into the consulting world.
Your ability to forecast and your ability to understand your financial position and to forecast that out is going to be your biggest strength coming out of that. That's going to translate well to a consulting career. The additional thing is not just being able to forecast, but also looking for risks, which is a big thing that, we spend all our time on. What risks are we trying to mitigate? Again, with finance, that's kind of some of the stuff that you'd be doing. I could see that translating very well too.
Are there any accounting majors in the room?
Yay.
Yeah,
Did all of us work in accounting? I did. When first
I
got
did.
Yeah, I did accounting.
I mean, that's
That's
what we
possible.
do. We do a lot on, that's probably, I would say the classwork that I use the most on a daily basis is accounting. NetSuite is an ERP system, which I would say every company that uses it to put together an income statement and balance sheet. And the core pieces of that are journal entries. So every transaction with NetSuite is really a journal entry that's happening behind the scenes. You're debiting something, you're crediting something. And that is honestly from my classwork back in school, I think is what is the most relatable work that I do today is understanding a journal entry is really a lot of what we have as far as transactions within NetSuite. I agree.
One quick thing for all the accounting, finance, transition into consulting is make sure you can tell a story behind your numbers. There's a lot of data that we deal with. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of metrics. If you can package that into a way that's digestible and understandable, usually you can make a lot more sense and put yourself in a lot better position communicating.
All right, does anyone else have a question?
Yes.
In what ways have you used newer technology to make your job easier or to provide greater value to the client?
I'm here in Kansas City today. So, honestly, I know that's a flippant answer, but the evident, with COVID accelerating the ability to utilize things like Teams and Zoom and collaboration tools, even things that are kind of ancillary to Teams, like whiteboard and things like that, that you can still like if we were in a room together, we'd go to the whiteboard and draw things out. We can still do that. It's just, we're all virtual. I think that has probably been the biggest game changer, at least in the last probably 5 years.
In terms of technology, like something that, I mean, I think all firms these days, like Doug and Steve said, are focusing on innovation and how to integrate new technologies into the daily processes and stuff. But as far as the internal audit work that we do, I mean, we've developed quite a few like in-house tools that we use to kind of speed up some of our IT testing, that where in the past you get a list of like user passwords for something, and you'd have to go through and someone would have to manually look at them and see which ones fit the password criteria and stuff like that. But now we've developed things where you put the list in, it scans it real quick, it tells you how many exceptions there are, which then that might sound like it's like taking work away from somebody, but it really just opens more time for like the more detailed work that still hasn't been able to be completely automated and stuff yet. So those kind of robotic process automation tools and stuff that we've used have sped up the audit process, and I only see them really expanding in the years to come. So that's been cool to see that development.
I think one of the things that we use is information sharing. So whether it's technology to get information flow from one system to another. Some companies may have a system of record that does financials and another one that does operations data and everything. So just flowing data from one system to another. And there are increasingly amounts of resources to do that. Could be something like a Delmumi or a Saliga or any, I mean, there's so many resources that are constantly evolving and changing and using of APIs and just different technology to share information. And I think that's only going to increase as well. So the visibility to data seems to be something that's not going to change.
Is there any more questions?
Yeah. You all mentioned how important keeping track of your time is. Do you have any particular, method? Like do you use like Outlook calendar, paper?
I like to, so Outlook is usually probably one of my go-tos as far as like just a meeting hold. Like if I talk to somebody for 15 minutes, then I'll just put an appointment on my calendar for 15 minutes of who I talk to. A lot of what we do with time entry goes back to like time entry folders. So it could just be something as simple as like an Excel line to say, hey, you could just put your folder on an Excel line to say what their charge code is and how much time you spent. And then at the end of the day, you just do a pivot table of your summary of charge codes, that type of thing. But I mean, you can do it however you want as long as you report it accurately and everything. So I would say with that is if you didn't spend time on something and you have 8 hours a day you're trying to charge for, don't just allocate it out type of process. Be accurate to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it can be as easy as just like you said, just putting a Excel document together, and sometimes there are weeks where I'll just list out which clients I'm working on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday across the top, and then I'll just like go down the columns and allocate whatever hours I did. Of course, some weeks that's easier than others because you can either lose track or you get pulled into a client that you didn't even have on the schedule at first and foremost or something like that. So, but it's really just what works for you. A lot of firms do it different ways in terms of how they have you report your time. So that's something you learn like when you get started with whatever company you work for, kind of what they expect and levels of precision and stuff like that. So it's really just what works for you.
Yeah, I think Nick hit the nail on the head with that one. I was literally going to say it's just kind of whatever suits you best. Like for me, I looked out when I was in insurance, like the whole department passed around a time tracker that's in Excel that they created, and it basically will spit out like, one column has like start, other column has like end, and then it has like information for data, and then it will calculate like how many hours you spent working on something. And so I use that for like all my time tracking, which I feel like is a cheat because I was like, thank God I got that. I'd be like these guys trying to like pivot tables and all that, and I'm like spending more time trying to figure out how I actually spent my time than like just being able to toss it in there. And leveraging like your calendars and meeting invites and stuff like that's always good. But really it's just kind of finding that method that works best. And I think like most people will say they've got their own special sauce, their own way that they go through and try and keep track of it as best they can. But being accurate about it, being honest about it, and just like keeping up to date with it. And if things change around, or if you have to like shift your time around, being able to like know how you're going to do that too. So that's kind of my whole thing.
No different outlook and a piece of paper usually, is how I keep track of it.
I would just, my advice is do it daily, I guess, is the only other
Yeah,
thing. So-
definitely daily.
So the more frequently you do it, the easier it's gonna be to record.
Yeah, don't wait till Friday afternoon or
Or
Sunday.
your 2 week pay
Sunday.
cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
because then you're gonna be like, what did I do 10 days ago?
Right.
Like,
and try and keep it specific too, is at least as
Yeah.
specific as you can. Because I've run into that issue where like I've gone back on a Friday and like I have the stuff put out, but I made it so high level because it was just in the moment that I'm
Right.
like, okay, I'll put that client's name down. What was I doing for that client again?
because sometimes there's like different like subcodes of like the different like lines of work on a client or stuff like that. So
Mhm.
it can get kind of convoluted, but
Yeah,
just what Nate said, just remember, be as specific as possible when you're remembering what you did with your time.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
Also, sorry, I do just want to be cognizant of time. So I want to make sure you all can come up and like introduce yourselves to these panelists because supposed to wrap up in about 10 minutes. So we can take your questions. Are they quick questions, you think, or?
No, really.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be respectful of their time. So,
Go ahead and ask the question.
yeah, we'll go ahead and ask it and then go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you think you could speak a little more in detail about any projects or recent projects you've been working on? Just to have like a better idea of what a day-to-day looks like, or maybe the challenges you encounter in the consulting industry?
I can start.
Yeah, as I say, it's gonna be different because I
I
think
know.
we represent platforms.
Yeah.
As ERP, I'm more of a service
Service
management,
Mm.
HR, onboarding, that kind of thing.
I would, yeah, I'll just give you a high level. I mean, so a project for us usually starts with almost I'm gonna say a scoping. So we figure out really what are the client's requirements. We break that down for us into 4 sections. So we have what would be like what's called procure to pay. So from really an order being placed to when they actually pay the bill. So really more expense side. Order to cash, which is revenue usually. So invoices to customers, that type of thing. And then we kind of look at their segmentation, which is more reporting, and then really just like a general preference. So we kind of start with all of those settings up front. Make sure that I would say those are more fact-finding sessions, so they're usually kind of lengthy, but you're really trying to learn everything we can about a business's processes for those pieces. They could be sessions that take days or weeks to cover. They could be sessions that are just a couple hours and done. And then from there, it really goes into system configuration, setting up the system in those regards. And then it can get into really what is called like a user acceptance testing or a walkthrough, making sure that their instance of NetSuite, that we took the requirements, we set it up as we thought it should, now performs like they think it should. So we kind of progress into that phase. And then from there is really almost like a sign off and go live. So setting that date, which is probably set fairly early on in the project, may gotten pushed, whatever it be. And so I have a client right now that we really went through all 4 of those, I'm going to say 4 or 5 pieces in a matter of 4 months. It was, I mean, teaching them the system. So NetSuite wasn't something that they'd used before. However, they were on a QuickBooks Web Edition, Enterprise, whatever it was, and they wanted something more scalable, which is often what the case, I would say, is we see with NetSuite as an ERP is they want something scalable. They're a growing company. They want something that they can grow with them. And that's really what NetSuite is. It is a product that was purchased by Oracle, kind of developed, sold, repurchased by Oracle. Which if any of you familiar, that they just purchased Cerner, I think. They are a very, very large company, headquartered in Austin. But that's the great part is like, I really don't work with NetSuite. I work with RSM and our support of the NetSuite product. So it's just a kind of a quick summary of a project for us.
Anyone else want to touch on that or?
I mean, we're also different.
Yeah, I know.
It's all gonna be different because some projects are gonna follow that. And by the way, those of you that are studying business, are they talking about agile development in here at all, in your classes? Get on your professors to ask your professors to explain agile development because that's what's being used out in the field, okay? And then we have projects where we do what we call road mapping, where we come in and we assess what they need to have done, what we think they can use the tool for, and how they would go about that over time.
And the cool part, I would say, is like what we are talking about today really relates. So like we use ServiceNow at work to do really case management and task requests and information that a lot of times it's I need this, or I have a question about this, or I need access to this. But there's different sources of that across the board. Like you can use ServiceNow you can talk their ear off about what ServiceNow can do. Yeah, so there's so many applications of different consulting pieces. And just because it can do one doesn't mean you can't be involved and do another using the same application.
Right, I think that's that. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, one more
Oh,
question.
that's okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, I guess it's, if you all need to leave at 1:30, that's fine, but yeah.
I'm fine.
I'm okay for now.
My question is just about the employment outlook for the industry and then how that's affected by business cycles and other external factors, like maybe a recession or regulation.
You mean like that we might be in and we're just not thinking about it?
You're telling too much.
Well, we're no different. I don't know, everybody's been, I think one thing that's happened over the last couple of years is what are they calling it, the great exit or
Yeah,
whatever,
great resignation.
the great resignation. And I don't care if it's carpenter or IT technology, we're all being impacted by it. There's going to be a great need for people, again, I'm going to get back to it, embrace the technology and be able to be flexible with it because there's going to be I think there's going to be a lot of need for it in the future. Let's be honest, I'm not working forever, right? And so you got a lot of people at my age, they're getting ready to exit, the workforce here in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's going to raise some opportunity for you guys. And one thing you'll note about consulting, and it kind of makes you go scratch your head, but during recessionary times, usually consulting firms have some of their better years. And if you think about it, because companies go through recessions, they usually lay off or they look for somebody else to do some of the work that they had budgeted. And so bring in outside, we're gone tomorrow, right? So I think the future is bright, I guess is the bottom line, if you have this interest.
And I would say with that is a matter of, if somebody handed me a resume that says, hey, I want to come work in NetSuite Consulting, I'd be like, all right, when can you start? So just because with us even is a matter of like, I have some friends that are kind of thinking like, hey, do they want to get into it, where I've known them from other work engagements or whatever it be. And for us, it's like as far as kind of our niche of industry and business application, we may not have a job posting posted per se, but our team is certainly always growing. That is one of our fundamental goals for kind of as a team for the year is like a 20% employee growth. So I don't see that slowing down. And as he said, is a matter of
we just reviewed our headcount numbers for this coming year for our business. And my business group personally is going through a hyper growth stage right now. And, you know, we're gonna be hiring probably about 200 people. this next year.
Yeah, and you see that like with, I mean, take Garmin, for example. I think Garmin and Olathe just said, hey, we're hiring 1,500 people. Granted, they're not a consultant, that's more the private industry. But I guarantee it, with the growth that they're experiencing, they'll be bringing in consultants to do pieces of work that have done anything and everything, so.
Yeah,
It is not. slow.
even on the public side of this thing, or like the public accounting side of this thing, like for what I'm doing, like we just hired on, like we had, I think, 3 interns that we had this past summer season, extended offers to all of them accept. We had like 2 launch interns, I believe, as well, extended them offers, they accepted. We brought in 3 experienced hires and a new senior's about to come in. Like we're also, and I mean, this team isn't like very big. It was about maybe like 10 to 13 of them when I started. And so like I was new 9 months ago, and in those 9 months, they've even brought on more people. So like, even within this side of it, you know, not so much like the consulting implementation, but more of like the consulting testing. Cause I mean, that's really what we're doing, is we're looking at what these guys are implementing out there, making sure like these companies are utilizing it correctly and that like it's up to the regulations that are set forth to make sure that their internal controls are correct. So on that other side, without getting into the nitty gritty, like there's also growth there too. And like, it's been kind of weird because I thought like when I got hired on, I'd be one of the last people for a while because it's such a small team, but like, no, it's going. And I think it's a big effect because of what these guys are talking about for the different businesses that are growing and the way that the industry can kind of seem like it hit a boom, you know, even during these more tumultuous economic times.
Great. Well, let's thank our panelists. Thank you all. I think if they can, they'll hang around if you want to come meet them, and might be helpful if you're looking to get into consulting, make some connections. And I think you were alluding to that, Marcus. Yeah, so, but thank you all for coming. And if there's any leftover pizza, feel free to grab it. So, and if you didn't get checked in, sign in sheets right over here. So, thank you.
I'm down there dropping those gems on us.
Sure, man. Yeah, you did a good job too. Yeah, yeah.
Good job.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
I think I remember you on the radio.
Yeah, I've been told.
Before I listened to you, I'm like, yeah, I think that's. I don't know what, but I think I
know.
remember him on the radio.
At some point, either during the day or during the night, you may have heard my voice just floating around the airwaves. Oh, boy. That's always a fun one,
What do
too.
you do more, nighttime or daytime radio?
I started off at night, so
Yeah.
that's kind of where the bulk of my time was spent, but then I transitioned to doing middays